All right, guys. So I'm here at the Heroes Summit in North America. I'm with Dustin Browder, and we just saw the pretty epic presentation. I guess at that point it's already public knowledge, most of it. So yeah, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to do the interview here. And as you can imagine, I have a couple of questions, mainly with all the modes that you guys are putting out right now. So one of the things I was actually a bit curious about, you already announced that in the changes to come for ranked mode for Hero League, you are increasing the queue size again from like 2 to 3. What exactly is the thought process behind it? Like, we already had those dynamic queues a long time ago. People weren't really happy with it. You went down to 2. There's always been a bit of discussion about it. What kind of thought process did you guys have going now for a 3-man queue once again?
Well, our goal with the queues has always been to get as many players as possible who want to play together, playing with one another. One of the challenges we had with the 3 and the 4-man queues is our matchmaker wasn't really at a place where it could hold up and provide quality matches to players. And the 4-man queues in particular were causing a lot of problems, but the 3-man queues weren't helping us at all either. And so as a defensive move, we pulled those out to make our matchmaking process easier. And that was before BlizzCon last year, when our matchmaker was really struggling to match people correctly. We've done a lot of improvements to the matchmaker since then, and with this new Ranked Play update, we're introducing a change where you cannot group together with somebody who is of a significantly different skill level than you are. So you're going to be pretty close, so you won't be able to have those bronze and diamond level players grouping up, making the matchmaker like, I don't know what to do, right? Like, it doesn't know how to handle that kind of insanity. And so by forcing, like, you're all pretty much gold. Now you're allowed to group. We think that the matchmaker will be able to hold up to that. We've done some simulations on it. We've looked at current data and said, no, this matchmaker it should make some good quality matches, even up to 3 players. So we're going to test 3 players and see if that does maintain sort of good quality matches for our players. We'd love to be able to have as many players as possible, but we think 3 is probably the limit right now, and we'll sort of see where this goes.
One of the things that a lot of people have already been talking about, kind of like catering towards the same idea, is that people have been saying, like, what about additional game modes? Would it, for example, be something that you guys consider putting in some kind of quick match mode where you have a draft as well, where you allow like 4-man queues, 5-man queues outside of Team League? And of course, there's a couple of downsides. People are always talking about, is the player base really big enough to cater towards something like this? People, of course, want to prevent that you queue for like an hour to find a game there, just exaggerating things a little bit. Are additional game modes in that sense to like just put a bit more diversity in something that you are currently considering, or is it something where you are saying we want to focus on the game modes we have for now and maybe in the distant future we can add something? Like, what's the thoughts on that?
Well, we want to avoid as many modes as we possibly can. We have the fewest possible modes, but we do understand there's a diverse community with a lot of different interests out there. So we're definitely looking at an unranked draft, especially coming out now that we're restricting players in their ability to play together if they're different skill levels. So I know I have several players that I play with where we're at very different skill levels. I have rank 1 players that I play with that I'm nowhere near rank 1. And in this world, we wouldn't be able to play draft together anymore. So we are going to add an unranked draft mode, which will allow that to happen. We're going to see how that goes. We've certainly had a lot of very positive feedback from the community towards that direction, but I want to see, is that a dead mode? I know I'll play in it. I believe some people will play in it. We'll see how it goes. It's not really about population size. We've got lots and lots of players in this game, but players do gravitate towards certain gameplay modes, and so we really want to make sure that we have as few modes as possible that create the best possible play experience. So unranked draft is almost a certainty at this point. I believe we are going to add it, hopefully very quickly here, so we can get into players' hands, especially as we roll out this new ranked play system. And I'm certainly open to people's feedback of what other modes they want to see, but we're going to examine each mode very carefully. Say, is this adding real value to the game, or is it just a little tweak? Doesn't really change it that much, and now we're in a position where we're really dividing up our matchmaking buckets even more, making matchmaking more challenging.
If you would add additional modes, that would of course also mean that there's like a lot more options for players that want to queue with a lot of friends, as we just like also mentioned. Is that something where you also say, okay, we put in the 3-man queue now again for Hero League, you're gonna look at the feedback and see if players actually accept it, especially on the pro level? A lot of players like seem to be more lenient towards having 2-man queues, solo queues, even in some cases when you talk to the pro teams. Is that something where you say, hey, we have the 3-man queue right now, we have our matchmaker in, like, much better, we have the new restrictions, so that should actually like put us in a position where you can like handle that? Is it something that is now fixed, or is it something where you look at the feedback and say, like, depending on what the players want, we might even be reducing that again?
Nothing in this game is fixed. We're always listening to feedback. We're always looking to make it better. We have a giant team of people constantly working on the game. Our heroes aren't fixed. Our talents aren't fixed. Our matchmaking isn't fixed. Even this ranked play system we're rolling out right now, we're open to feedback on. And one of the reasons that we like coming to events like this is we get to talk very directly with some of our most passionate players and see what their thoughts are on this. Now, I'm not going to be able to make a sudden change. If you said something to me like, oh my God, you're doing Grandmaster wrong, I'm probably not going to be able to fix that before it comes out, but I could fix it soon after. And having that feedback available to us now is incredibly powerful to us. So we're not dying on any hills here. There's nothing about this game that we would say, I would never hear feedback on that, no matter what. I'm going to my grave with that. Like, I don't care. We totally want to hear people's feedback of what's working and not working for them in the game, and we do want to respond. And we are trying to make the best possible experience for all of our players. Obviously, there's going to be competing requests. I want this, I don't want that. And we have to sort of figure out what is ultimately the way to go through that. What is the most fun? What do we think is the best play experience? But no, we're not committed to this. And you're going to see this with the ranked play. So we're going out with, we're going to try some different season lengths here in this first year to see what kind of season length feels good to us. If Hearthstone does a month, StarCraft does 3 months. What makes sense for heroes? What feels like a good season length? We're going to try 8 to 12 weeks to start with and kind of see how that feels to our players. And we're open to everybody's feedback on what makes sense as we try those things.
One of the things that I also wanted to ask when it came to the matchmaking system, like we've already talked a little bit about in private, like the players have, for example, during the last weeks also said that they feel that the queue time went down, which in general is of course like a good thing. People don't really want to queue for too long. But then there's always like this idea that you have, if you queue for longer, if the queue time increases, that the game experience that you have is going to be better because the matchmaking system is going to be able to just like look for a match that really fits you and maybe wait for a couple of high skill players to jump in as well, especially on the pro level. There has been sentiment. Is that one of the things where you say that, for example, dynamic queues might be an option in the future? There's of course always that need to cater towards the more casual base that are, especially in a quick match and Hero League sense, looking for a very short queue, and then you have to cater towards the top of the pyramid where the pro players are willing to wait much, much longer but want to have like a much closer game. Is that something where matchmaking change is also going to come in, that maybe like try to take into consideration which kind of player is currently queuing up?
It's certainly an option for us. I don't think we've done anything suddenly that would cause matchmaking times to go down, other than maybe we have more players in there that's making it more possible. So we haven't done anything to tune that, like, oh, we're going to make bad games really quickly now. That's not our goal. We're still very much on the side of making quality games. We've heard that feedback over and again, and honestly, it doesn't really change that much whether you're a casual or a hardcore. Everybody wants good games. The player who's not that great, guess what he wants? He wants a good game, and he's willing to sit there a little bit and get it. There's a point where which no one will wait, that it's just human nature, like, I got other things to do, guys. Like, this is 37 minutes. I could have played 3 games by now. I'm out of here. So I don't really feel like there's that much conflict between, a gold player and a grandmaster player. They're both pretty passionate about good games. It's not like we're like, that guy, he'll take whatever. He really won't. And remember too, that gold guy, if I'm giving him whatever, that whatever might be a diamond player, and he's not happy either. So there really is no one out there who's like, just give me a game in 30 seconds. I don't care who's in it. No one's in that place. Everybody wants the best game we can possibly give them as quickly as possible, but they want the best game we can possibly give them. So I'm very open to the idea that we could do something different for our Grandmaster players, but I don't feel like the gold players are in an emotionally different place. They want a good game too, and they don't want to see those Grandmasters in their game any more than the Grandmasters want them to be there, right? Nobody wants to be that guy. So I think we're okay with really pushing the idea of like, look, let's just focus on making the best games we possibly can. And then there comes a place where I feel like and we can have a discussion about what's a reasonable amount of time. Like when you're waiting longer than a match time to get the game. If you're waiting 20, 25 minutes, I kind of want to call foul and say, come on, let's get something going here, right? Maybe we start another game, it'll be a little better, but we don't have the pool here for this right now. But we're very open to, trying to focus on game quality. And if you guys are seeing something different than that, we'd love to hear it. And yet certainly, I've had conversations on Twitter. And I can sometimes go and look at accounts and look for bugs and problems. Sometimes the things that we see are very specific. Like, in this game, this guy showed up and the matchmaker thought that, and that's not right at all, and we can actually go and engage that. And a lot of the matchmaking problems we've been seeing these days, they don't apply to the general population. If you're looking at, 90% of our games, everything's fine, everything's working. But every now and then, we will find a bug or a little hitch or something that's gone a little bit wrong. We go, we could special case that, and then it would be better. And so we are looking for those, and we are continually hunting those, as well as looking for ways to make MMR more accurate. So MMR, we also sort of accept the idea that, well, I have a matchmaking rating, and the matchmaking rating is going to be a reflection of my skill. Yeah, but what if it's not a perfect reflection of your skill? Then when you get into a game, you're like, why is this guy ranked 2? He's terrible, right? and maybe you're terrible, you don't understand, or maybe he's terrible. There's something off in your skill level there potentially. And so I know that team is working very hard right now to find ways to make better estimates of your actual skill using matchmaking. So we got a lot of work still in front of us on the whole system. But I'm not sure we have a conflict between the Grandmasters and the Golds, but I'm open to it. And we could certainly, if we wanted to, make a different rule set at the highest end.
Another change that you've been talking about, which actually I very much welcomed, and there was applause in the audience immediately when it was announced, is that if you're a silence player, you're not queuing you're queuing with other silence players, so you're not going to end up with a game that was a bit of a problem in the past. I mean, to an extent where silence players even became captains of the team, couldn't even communicate with the team and ask, does someone want to play that Illidan, or do we have to ban that guy out? Exactly. One of the questions that, of course, definitely going to pop up at some point is, are you going to reset silence durations, or is that guy that has his 14-day, 1-month silence going to just completely being screwed?
It's a really good question. We've talked about it quite a bit. I'm certainly open to feedback on this. This is the first time we've announced this sort of publicly, so we're going to kind of see what the reaction is and see if somebody can explain to us why we should unsilence these players. In order to be for silence for more than a month, you have to have been really...
The polite word to go.
You had to have certainly incited a lot of reports. It's a lot of reports because you remember the first silence I think it's for a day is the first silence, and then it doubles again and again and again. So you had to have been silenced for a day. That silence had to have ended, so then we've reset you, and then you had to have been bad again, and you had to have multiple games worth of players all reporting you, right? And it had to keep going. So then you silenced for 2 days. So you silenced 2 days. You can't be reported in those 2 days. So then you got back on day 4 now, and then again you were mean to people long enough, again, over multiple games. It's not like one game is going to get you silenced. You got to keep going. So everybody's reporting you many, many games in a row. And it's not like the enemy team can report you. It's only your allies that are reporting you. And so it goes. And so, some of these guys, they're silenced for 6 months. They've been pretty bad. I'm open to the idea that they've bricked their account, and maybe that's a problem, right? And so we had a big argument about it. I know last week when this sort of came to light that this was a possibility. There were a few players out there that had a 6-month silence, and that they were now out of Hero League. They can still play Team League. That's still an option for them, and they'll still be able to, if we get an unranked draft in play, they'll still be able to play there as well. We're really talking about. And they can still, I believe they can still join as well in, actually don't quote me, I'm not sure if they can join dual queue or not, but they can certainly play some game modes. But right now, our feeling is no, we're not going to, but we'll see. We'll see. That's certainly an option for us, and I'd certainly be interested in hearing more feedback about that this weekend.
How do you currently also handle the aspects of, oftentimes, for example, it was a problem with the silence players, especially in the past. Ping spam became an issue. You already cater towards that need. At the same time, though, oftentimes you have people that intentionally lose games for the team. They revive, they just right-click the enemy base, they die again, and that happens over and over again. It's a lot harder to detect than silences, I would say, or that flaming because of the report system and how it works. How do you guys currently deal with that, and with what can be the punishment for someone? Because it feels like this is actually something where a game master has to look at the actual game to identify that problem. So how does Blizzard currently handle these things?
We have a customer service group that does look at these things, but we're not able to hit them as quickly, I think, as players would like. This is something that we are very passionate about in the development team, finding a solve for. The challenge, obviously, is anything that we do to you could be abused by other players. They could say, oh, I didn't like the fact that you picked Murky, so I'm going to report you as AFK feeding. And if something happens automatically at that point, and then we're punishing the innocent. But we are pretty excited about some solves for this. We're going to keep talking about solves for that. We talk about it, almost on a weekly basis at this point. We have some ideas for things we may be able to do. Right now, we are relying on customer support. So if you see somebody doing that, definitely report them. They will get hit at some point if they've done it often enough in customer support, but it may not happen right away. And that's where the real challenge comes in. You kind of want to see justice immediately. You kind of want to know this guy got reported, and then his computer got formatted, and he's something bad because he's really hurting your gameplay experience. And if you're playing in ranked, he's really hurting your gameplay experience in a terrible way. So I think we need to find some better tools that maybe aren't as abusable. But right now we are relying on the report system that we have, which is not necessarily getting you the justice you want as quickly as you need it. Absolutely.
The community has also talked a bit about that it feels a bit weird if you like report people for feeding. I mean, I would even argue that silence players and people that flame you during the game can be quite toxic, and it's definitely taking away from your game experience. But I would say that someone who potentially loses the game for the team is even worse. So if you report that guy, at some point, of course, you would really love to see what happens to him. And the community has been talking a bit about how if Blizzard can maybe give you some kind of notification in Battle.net when you log in and say like, listen, that guy that you played with a couple of times and that you reported like 5 times for that, there was a punishment. Is that something that you're also trying to add, or is that at this point just more of a nice to have that you would like to add in the future but just don't have the resource or the time for implementing yet?
Well, we're definitely focused on other things. So we're obviously been focused on matchmaking almost exclusively for quite some time. We're now also adding to that focus this, changes we're talking about here to ranked play as well. But this is something we would definitely like to get to. I'm not against getting to this at all. I would say actually getting those guys out of the game, period, would be my highest priority. The second highest priority after that would be telling you that your report was meaningful. I would much rather have the criminals caught and thrown in jail than the police came to your door and said, hey, it was because of your report. But once we get these guys tossed in jail, we get them sort of out of the ecosystem or in a spot in the ecosystem where they can't really hurt anybody anymore, then I think it would another feature they would love to have on that is hey, your report was a meaningful part of that. I think that would be hugely helpful.
One last question with the match system when it comes to like ranked mode overall. One of the problems or one of the issues that a lot of the competitive players have been talking about is that they try sometimes to get into the same games on either side just by queuing at the same time, but find themselves ending up in different games. And oftentimes match with players that are on a much lower level than they are. So that seems to be a bit of a problem. Can you maybe tell us if that was already addressed in the changes to the matchmaking system that you've been talking about, or how that can actually happen? Do you have any insights on that?
So I'm going to have more questions for you in that. So obviously our goal would never be to allow players to collude to get into games opposite one another, right? That could manipulate the rank system doing that. So what are they trying to accomplish by getting into a game with one another? Are they hoping to get a fairer match? Is that what they're hoping to accomplish? So it's not like we should be playing in custom game, but we're trying to use the matchmaker. It's I want to be in a game with great players. I know there's great players in the game right now. If we queue at the same time, maybe we'll end up together. Interesting.
It's not like they're hitting the search button necessarily at the same time, but oftentimes when you have, like, for example, different teams coming online, they're just looking at their friends' plays. They're seeing, okay, players from Dignitas, from Fnatic are currently playing as well. They're all queuing. So if I queue now, chances that I actually get a good game playing on a high level against other people, then it's like, and oftentimes they end up in different games. And the question was always, how does that happen? Why is the matchmaking suddenly teaming me up with people that are like 1,500 MMR below me, whereas at the same time other pro players queued up as well, and I should have ended up in a game with and against them?
I don't think I know the answer to that question. I think it's a great question. I think what we could do is we could certainly have a look into those games specifically. Like I'd have to actually have an engineer look at the matchmaking at that moment to see what the brain of the matchmaker was thinking at that moment. Like we can quiz the matchmaker. We can say, what were you thinking right there? Right? And we can look in at the math and we can sort of query the matchmaker to see what his thoughts were at that moment. But I don't know what happened at that moment. And I don't know what's going on with HOTS Like I think HOTS is a wonderful community tool, and I definitely love that it's out there, but it's not necessarily accurate, and or it doesn't match our numbers, right? And so I don't know what when you say they were the same. Like were they the same to us, or were they just the same in HOTS? I don't know. Maybe, probably, it is very possible, but maybe not. Certainly at that high in MMR, it's very likely that almost all the games are being reported, and then in that place, HOTS is probably going to be very similar to ours, but maybe not. So maybe there's somebody in there that didn't match according to our MMR ratings, and so the matchmaker said, nope, not you. You're lower than you think you are, or you're higher than you think you are, and so we could certainly look at it and see. But we could query it. We could have a look in at those. So maybe that's something we could have a conversation about. We could get an example of this guy on this date did this thing. How come? And we can take a look at the matchmaker and see what his thought process was.
All right, coming back to a different game mode now that we actually talked a lot about ranked, coming back to Quick Match for a moment. Currently, one of the things that is a bit transparent in Quick Match is that the system seems, when it comes to compositions of heroes, to aim for, not really aim, but to certainly prioritize certain mirror matches as well. It is leaning a little bit more to a mirror.
It doesn't have any rules one way or the other about mirror matches. It doesn't really care about mirror matches. And so if it goes to make a match and it happens to be a mirror because certain heroes are very popular, then it's certainly going to be okay with that.
So it currently tries to match at least roles a little bit. If one team does have a healer, it's going to try and put a support on the other team as well, and that happens quite a bit. One of the things is that it doesn't really seem to make a distinction between a melee assassin and a ranged assassin, which can sometimes be a huge problem if, for example, you end up in a team without a tank and your opponent is running a Thrall and an Illidan, whereas you only have one healer and a lot of ranged heroes. Is that something where you feel the need to like put more rules in? Is that a thing where you say like, yeah, that happens every now and then and you deal with it? Or are there going to be any changes to the way that the matchmaking system is going for the compositions?
I'll put this out there to see sort of what your thoughts are and the thoughts of the community are. Our view on quick match right now is we do want to have some rules in there, but as few rules as possible. The quick match is designed to be the Wild West of uncertainty. It's asking you to react to the environment as much as possible. In some ways, I regret the need to do any rules at all. I wish we almost didn't have to do the support rule, for example, but we did, and I think it does add to the experience. But we really want you to be in there and reacting, and sometimes you're going to get a composition in there that you go, I don't know how I'm supposed to. What am I supposed to do? And it's like, okay, you better think about your talents a little differently than you have in your past. Don't just run the same play you've always run. Try something different. Try something new. At most skill levels of play, I would argue it's fine. Now, at the highest end competition, those players maybe should be either in an unranked draft or in a draft mode, because at that level of play, maybe it's not possible to talent your way or teamwork your way out of one of these scenarios. But we definitely feel like that Wild West is part of the fun of quick match. One of the things that has happened to a lot of games in this genre is they get very restrictive with how you have to play the game. And the meta becomes just the rules, and that's it. We really want this game to be more fun than that. We really are very passionate as game developers about, we're going to keep changing heroes. We're going to keep introducing new heroes like Medivh that really shake up what you think of the meta. If you look at Medivh, he doesn't have a role. He's not support. He's not assassin. He's not tank. He's Medivh.
Pretty OP, you mean?
Maybe. We'll see. But he's utility like crazy, right? And that's what most of his power comes from. But he's not going to blow up with his fists. He's not going to blast you with a spell, but he's going to work within the team in these really unusual ways that either make plays or don't, depending on the cooperation. So quick match for us is an extension of that core philosophy of we don't want a stale meta. We don't even want a particularly stable meta. We really want this to be an environment where anything can and will happen. Now, obviously, once we get to Hero League and to Team League, we're dealing with a space with bans and drafts where players have the capability, and we're even sort of asking them, make a meta, define the rules, restrict the play, reduce the variables, destroy as much fun as possible to make sure it's as competitive as possible. Get those heroes out because they're no good. Only focus on these 14 or these 16 or these 20 or whatever we can make. And we're going to do everything we can to make all the heroes viable. But there's going to be a meta in that space, and that's going to be cool for that environment. And quick match is quick match. Quick match is a space where anything can and will happen. Now, there may be more scenarios that I'm not aware of that require more rules, and maybe melee and ranged is one of those. The more rules we add, the worse the matchmaking becomes, so I'm resistant. Also, the more rules we have, the more it doesn't become quick match anymore. It becomes, find me 4 guys to help me win a game, which is not really the goal of quick match. The goal of quick match really is, I want to get in a game with this hero, and I don't really care who I'm playing with. Exactly. I want skill level to be the same, but I don't know who I'm going to get. Like, I just want to play Li Ming. Can I just play Li Ming? Sure. You can play Li Ming. Do I get a tank? I don't know. We're going to see what happens. But that's our position. And we've been certainly hearing from players that they wish quick match was a different mode. They wish that quick match was go find me a great composition that meets my needs. I chose Li Ming, so I get a support, and I get a warrior, and I get 1 melee DPS, and I get 1 other ranged DPS. Specialists have no role in this moment, right? Because I don't know how to fit them in, right? Medivh doesn't ever play because I don't know what he is, and that's not what I came for. I want, this specific thing. But that's we're viewing that as draft. If you want to build the perfect comp, go to draft. But if you just want to play your hero and you don't mind going to a place where who knows what will happen next, we think quick match is where it's at. And I'll add further that while you do definitely get the game where you've got 4 warriors and the other team has 1, and you're like, okay, I don't know what we're going to do here, right? You also get the game, that's all specialists and all assassins, and suddenly the game is a whole different game. And it's an absolute blast. So I don't know. We're open to it, but we definitely feel like quick match for many of our players is kind of working, and it's something we're very passionate about.
You called it the anything can happen mode in the past. And I mean, catering towards the spirit of what you just explained, do you feel that there might be a space for like certain maps that only appear in quick match that have, for example, certain random elements or like random stuff happening on the game? We saw things like this in StarCraft at certain tournaments where you could all of a sudden like flood the entire map with lava or stuff. Just like random stuff. I mean, I'm going over the top here a little bit, but if you say like the anything can happen mode, just like having a map that wouldn't work in competitive because you need stable elements there, but that would allow allow for like certain random effects to happen on the map that just cater towards that. Is that something that you guys have already thought about?
It's something we've talked about. We've talked about it more for Arena. We feel like that's the place for those kinds of game modes. And so we're really looking at Arena as maybe more of a tavern brawl mode, if you've played any Hearthstone, where anything can and will happen, and we're rotating what does happen on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. We showed some Arena last year, at BlizzCon, and we thought it was pretty cool, but all of the maps were in a similar theme. You get a choice of 3 random heroes, and you go into a very small, tight battleground, and there's different battlegrounds we're fighting on. We introduced an ARAM map recently that you can only play in custom game, but that's the kind of thing that will go right into Arena as well and be available in Arena. So I think we're viewing Arena as kind of that really crazy on the battleground side, where things can get really nutty. And it's certainly a place we could experiment with those ideas. And if we liked a battleground in there, we could consider it. We have talked about having a split pool for Quick Match and for Hero League as a possibility, and for Team League as well, and we could certainly still discuss. I'm open to that feedback. One of the concerns we have about that is that transition could be much more difficult for players, even if it's like you're playing Quick Match and then the next game you play Hero League. Like, wait, what are these maps again, right? Depending on what's in there, and certainly for players coming up through the ranks. So I think we'd like to keep them the same from now, and I think we make Arena the crazy town, but maybe not. I mean, that's certainly an open discussion.
One last question. We talked about maps a little bit, and one of the things that have also popped up in the community and that you already have implemented in StarCraft is that if you queue for games, you can actually downvote certain maps that you can say like, okay, this is a map that I don't want to play. Is that something that you are thinking about introducing into Hero League as well, that a player can, for example, say, I hate playing on Blackheart's Bay in Hero League, I want to just not play this map ever?
We certainly talked about it frequently. One of the challenges we have with it, with 10 players, we would need at least 11 or 12 maps in the pool to really make sure that everybody's vote was meaningful. Otherwise, there's a good chunk of the time where you're going to downvote a map and you're still going to get it because everybody downvoted different maps or whatever it was. And so we feel like that's kind of a weird experience. Like, I don't want to see Blackheart's Bay. Here's Blackheart's Bay. What did I just say to you? I just said I don't want to see it. Like, here it is, because everybody else banned the things they didn't want to do. And so in the 10v10, it's a little harder than it is in the 1v1. In some ways, I'd rather just fix Blackheart's Bay, but we're certainly open to it as a possibility, and we're looking for different systems that can sort of allow for that.
Thank you very much, Dustin. Thanks a lot for the interview. It's great.